Hello, people of the Node, the podcast published by IDA, the magazine of the Decision Science Alliance. And today I'm very glad to meet Elena Meneghetti, who's very interested in bringing us into the deepest of the meaning of human thoughts, the way we decide, the way the human intelligence involves more than just calculation, computation, and data, but as very broader meaning for us. So, Elena, welcome to the Node.
Oh, thank you, Luca. Thank you for inviting me.
Elena, can you introduce yourself to our community?
Oh, okay. I do that. You know, for my job, usually the focus is on the other people. So presenting myself is something very challenging for me. Anyway, I'm a C-suite coach and advisor, and I developed some unconventional method that I'm using with my coachees. I usually coach executives or a few sport professionals, few medical doctors. And then I would add, I'm a researcher on human excellence. That's my real passion. And well, originally I'm a linguist. And then I worked for plus years in multinational companies in global roles. And then I moved to being a consultant and then a coach and an advisor. And, you know, as a consultant, I was wondering, why is it that they have all their data, they know their product, the market, their customers, their competitors, and they can buy any market research. And why do they hire me for designing their strategy? And when I had the answer to this question, I turned my profession into coaching them to find their unique, peculiar answers. You know, we are all unique. No two humans are identical. There's no two companies that are the same. And so it's very fascinating. And in order to get to these techniques, I have been studying now for 40 years, anything that goes from psychology to anthropology, you name it. And then I've been testing continuously and methodically everything that I found out. And especially in these days of turmoil, when executives need to navigate uncertainty, then my job is really exciting, fascinating. I really love it.
Yeah, but me too. I've attended a couple of your speeches and keynotes, and every time I found your arguments, your topics fascinating so much. And yes, it brings me one question about, you said every human is different, but my thought is we are all humans, right? So what's common in the process of decision making from the human perspective? So how do we humans decide?
Yeah. So how do we human decide? Well, in these days we are so concerned in how AI takes decisions, and we skip how we humans decide, but we are very different in kind. So, well, we know the peculiarities of speed, consistencies, and huge database processed by AI, and that is designed a little bit on our brain, let's say. We use the same words, neural net and brain, as referred to AI. But of course, AI operates on digital principles and processes information as discrete units, 0 or 1, or in quantum computers, superposition 0 and 1. And even as complex as this is, it's not as complex as we are. First of all, any decision we take is driven by our intention and operates through our perceptions. For example, how do we input data? Where do we take data? Let's say we need to know what is outside there, okay? And we do this through our 5 senses. some say more than 5, but let's stick to 5 senses. And let me make an example. Let's take vision. Out there are some photons. They strike a very narrow range of photons, so of wavelengths between 400 and 700 nanometers, strike our receptors in the retina of the eye, and everything that is above or below that goes undetected. And this narrow range is transformed into electrical impulse, and then starts an extended journey, very complex one, through our optic nerve, our nervous system, and larger complex structures. And what's important is that this process removes, changes, adds to the data stream that serve as initial input. So how do we know before deciding we need to know what's outside there? We do that with this transformation. And it's even more complex than these. There are biochemical conditions, connections, synaptic junctions. I'm keeping it simple, but at this point, who knows what the hell is outside there? We don't know, okay? The data, the stream of electric impulse from the two-dimensional surface of my retina onto the occipital cortex transforms in three-dimensional data. And then, only then, I can see something. So in this transformation is the way we know things, and we transform a lot the first data that we input. Then as humans, we change this data again, we transform them again through language, and then again through experience. So when the data that I process are very different from the starting point. Okay, this is one step. The other one of the most interesting, personally to me, and as yet poorly explored phenomena that I address in my job is this imposition, linguistic imposition on the flow of experience that we call conscious and unconscious. It is important to begin with to understand that no such thing exists. It is, however, extremely useful to impose such linguistic constructs on the flow of experience in order to get a certain amount of leverage, the ability to move things around and make things happen. It is important that we don't believe in the imposition we actually make. However, it's extremely important that we know how to make use of the leverage provided by such imposed distinction.
Right.
Okay. For example, until I finish this sentence, the watcher listeners of your podcast will be unaware of the presence, location, temperature of their left big toe. As soon as you hear the language form, your consciousness shifts, your awareness moves to that part of the body, and suddenly what was previously a second ago unconscious becomes available, conscious. So it's not, only in inputting data, but this selection of data done by conscious and unconscious. And the distinction, as we see, is a dynamical one. What was unconscious a second ago comes at a conscious level in a second. And what we were focused on consciously can drop into unconscious and leaving us free to search around for more interesting things. Now, the application, what do we do with these? These two entities are, as Gregory Bateson, a famous anthropologist, says, that they are separate and quite distinct logics. So it becomes clear that if they are two different logical types, any attempt to integrate these two will ultimately fail each and every time. And so the question is not integration, the question becomes coordination. If these logics are incommensurable, a very precise term, which means they cannot be mapped isomorphically from one another, then the task is coordination. And it's not from the unconscious that creativity comes. It's from the collisions of these two logics that spark that we call creativity comes from. For example, decisions are taken through internal dialogue, and such coordination is key. So the entire point of this coordination is to achieve, typically temporarily, states of grace, states of congruency. And when such congruencies, such state of grace occur, this is what we call charisma. This is what we call presence. This is what we call people who know what the hell they're doing and are precise where they're going. These are the people who inspire us, who model as leaders. And this
Right,
is,
Elena. One
yeah,
question is about this.
yeah.
So we are assuming that so intelligence is not language and language is not intelligence. Is that right?
Language is not intelligence and intelligence is not language. In some parts of language. Language is, if we are thinking of words, then words are symbols like numbers, figures, and I mean, if I say apple, this is not an apple, this is the symbol for an apple. And language, well, we know what language is not for humans. It is not meant for communication, is it? You've been to some meetings, Luca, haven't you? If you watch in the sky any flock of birds with many birds, they communicate much better than they do in board meetings, don't they? So what is language for? First of all, the science that studies language is linguistic. And just to keep it interdisciplinary, the great revolution that occurred in modern linguistics happened when a mathematical model like the Turing machine influenced so much that Noam Chomsky and his transformational grammar. But okay, that was a parenthesis. So let's go. Linguistics has always been, well, in ancient time, the one science to understand our mind, how our mind works. Just because, as you say, intelligence and language are strictly related. In fact, 99% of language is used internally, either for internal dialogue or for thought, abstraction, generalization, imagination, which for Albert Einstein's opinion was even more important than knowledge. So that it's language that makes us different from all other animals on the planet, and is this for this ability to abstract, generalize, imagine and think, and that's language that allows us to do so. And here I want you to put your attention on this thing. So if it's true that more than 99% of language, some argue 99.9% of language, is used internally in order to create thoughts, which produce chemicals, dopamine, cortisol, adrenaline, and that we call emotions, joy, fear, rage, that transform into behaviors. Then if this is true, it's very important to put our attention on this thing. Have you ever tried to ask questions to a chatbot, ChatGPT, or any other language model? I'm sure you have, I do. And have you noticed how you started changing your own language in order to be better, quote, understood by that bot, and adapting your wordings to get more adequate answer? You know, we have to pay attention here because it is perfectly okay if we adjust the way we conceive a warehouse in order to adapt to robotic functioning, for example. But what happens if we start to adapt and transform our language to talk like in a kind of prompt language? If we start talking per prompts, what happens to our cognitive, emotional, and behavioral apparatus? So to go back, all these words that we use like intelligence, cognition, consciousness, creativity, learning, machines, for example, are very different when applied to humans. Intelligence comes from intelligere, intus legere, being inside things and understand them. And through our senses, as I was explaining before, or learning, for example. Learning, it's not a matter of data quantity. If you think the best at learning are children, and the one who have the least data, and the older we get, the more data that we have, the more difficult it gets to be learning new things. Don't you think so? It's funny, isn't it?
Right, understood. Yeah, so no, right, understood. But one thing that I would like to ask to you is through the meaning of what you're saying. So, in which terms, in your opinion, how human intelligence could be modified, transform itself with the interaction of machine learning and this kind of artificial intelligence technology, in your opinion?
Well, there are, of course, some very big dangers, and there are many possibilities. Well, with artificial intelligence, we have created a magical stick that can do wonders. First of all, we can delegate a lot of our routine-based activities. In these last centuries, especially here in this Western part of the world, if we think of our mind as we have delegated a lot to our rational part, to our hemisphere, who is in charge of being rational and what we call scientific, even if science is not only data, it needs data, but it's not only data. And so if we use it in the right way, then artificial intelligence can help us to rebalance this imbalance that we have had in this last, I would say, 5 centuries, since Illuminismos, okay? And for example, we can delegate a lot of our routine things or our daily decisions, and we can use it to project scenarios, to have a vast knowledge and data available, and use it as a magical stick. You know, if we take the right decisions, I don't know, Leonardo da Vinci 500 years ago decided that human beings could fly. It was against all odds. Nobody would have believed him, but he studied that. And nowadays I can fly to New York with an airplane that has been invented thanks to his research and his designs. And so if we take the right decisions, and we can really do wonders. And AI will help us a lot. You know, if Leonardo da Vinci had AI available, you know, we will be, our progress will be would be much greater. But of course, there are some dangers. One I already mentioned, and is this, you know, if we start talking per prompt and thinking per prompt, less and less human. The greatest danger I see is, as any technology, you know, first of all, it depends on how we use it, and especially who controls the way we use it. But that's not the biggest danger, according to me. The biggest danger is if we believe and buy into the story that we ourselves act and think per patterns, models, algorithms, and statistical predictions, then we'll start being less and less human. And those who are trying to persuade you that it is so, that we are machines, then they are either malicious and have evil intent, or they are confused and can tell symbolic from semantic, epistemology, how we know things, from ontology, how things are. And I'm sounding the alarm here because I see seriously already ongoing. In schools, for example, we are creating the cult of average with science. If I ask a question like, how fast can a child learn how to read in a classroom? Scientists change the question into, how fast does the average child learn how to read in the classroom? And then they tailor the class right towards the average. And I'm often in companies and I see it, there's a tendency to steer and align to procedures, staff processes towards conformity, standardization. We will be doomed if in an organization we keep on micromanaging our team, constraining them into strict procedures and orthodoxy. For example, or even in other fields, I mean, if doctors, when we are ill, try to fix us as if we were a broken car, or if we go to a coach surgeon in order to be happy. In short, if we buy into the story that we are machines and start behaving as machines, then machines will be better than us at being machines. And that's the danger. If we keep our potential, our human, as I was saying before, ability to imagine, to be creative, if we align those two big entities I was talking about, conscious and unconscious, and enter this flow, then of course our future can be very prosperous, and it's unbelievable the possibilities that we have, even thanks to AI, transformative potential.
Surely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally do agree with you, Elena. I totally do agree with you. Listen, we have one final question that is quite the usual final question that I would like to throw at you is, to me it sounds really interesting in this case because you're teaching C-levels the best way to find their own ways to decide. So my question is, how do you decide? How do you get your decision, Elena?
That's an interesting question. As I was saying at the beginning, I'm not used to focus on myself, but on others. So, well, first of all, when I'm coaching C-suite executives, if they need to take some decision, and if I have an intuition, and to suggest them, the first thing I do is I take an aspirin, go to bed, and wait until the intuition is gone, because everyone needs to find his own decision through that congruency and alignment I was talking before. As for me, the first step I take is identifying my very congruent intention. So, what's my intention in taking this decision, whatever it is? I mean, it's not only, I don't focus on the decision, but on the broader context. First step. Then, if I'm missing any knowledge or skill, I try and gather it. And it's very easy nowadays, thanks to the artificial intelligence, as we were saying, to gather any skills you don't have, any technical skills you don't have, you can find it easily and quickly. And then I work on my state. I try to achieve through exercises that state of grace I was talking about before, when I approach the context where the decision has to be taken. And this last being the most important step to me. I don't know if I answered your question.
Wow, yeah. No, so interesting from the perspective of someone like myself that is really needs to find not the best way, of course, but to explore how many different ways of taking decision are there in this world. And every time I'm throwing this question, every time I'm meeting interesting people like yourself, I find myself really intrigued by the idea of changing my own way of decision making with yours. So I thank you so much, Elena, for your presence here today at the Node. So I think we will meet up very soon in Catania, and have a nice day. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Luca, for having me, and see you in Catania very soon. Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Bye. Bye.